So for today's episode of Rare, we have Shekhar Natarajan, who has come to join us. And Shekhar is a seasoned biotech leader with more than 25 years of experience in drug development, in regulatory strategy, market entry, quality and compliance, with a special focus on life-threatening conditions and rare diseases. So Shekhar combines regulatory expertise and commercial acumen in driving geographical expansion and portfolio development, and is actively involved in EU industry association activities in driving innovation and accelerated regulatory pathways. So today he is here to share his career highlights, and he will also discuss the organizational differences between small to medium-sized companies versus big pharma and how this impacts business operations. So welcome, Shekhar. Great to speak with you today. But before we do discuss this topic, could you give us a quick overview of your background so far?
Yeah, thank you, Laura, for the opportunity to speak with you today. Let me start by saying the views presented here are my personal views and doesn't relate to any of the organizations that I've been associated with. So yeah, I'm almost nearing 30 years in the industry, and I have to say it's been a wonderful and insightful journey. I started my career in quality and then eventually moved into regulatory affairs. As part of my regulatory affairs journey, I have had the opportunity to sort of work on many different therapeutic areas and work closely with other functions like quality, research, medical, commercial, supply chain, manufacturing, and market access. So it's been great sort of learning experience for me so far. Last 10 years, as you said, I have predominantly been focused on therapies for rare disease, where I believe there's a huge unmet need. I started my rare disease journey with a company called Shire Pharmaceuticals, which is now part of Takeda, where I had the opportunity to work on a number of orphan indications. I then moved to a company called GW Pharmaceuticals, where I predominantly worked on rare epileptic seizures, again, kind of focus on rare disease. And I'm currently with a company called Dyne Therapeutics as Vice President, Head of EU and International Regulatory Affairs. At Dyne, I'm working on rare muscle disease like Duchenne muscular dystrophy, or it's called DMD, myotonic dystrophy type 1, or it's called DM1, and facioscapulohumeral muscular dystrophy, or it's called FSHD. So these are all rare, sort of, rare indications. Currently, there are no approved therapies for these conditions in the EU or UK. So you can see there's huge unmet need, in this area. I'm very passionate towards our efforts in dealing with rare diseases. I mean, just to give you some statistics, as per the European Medicines Agency website, there are over 6,000 distinct rare diseases, that exist, and almost affecting 36 million people in the EU. So you can see there's still a lot of work that needs to be done in the rare disease space. And as you mentioned, I'm also actively involved in the EU Industry Association activities and have been part of FPA in the past, and I'm currently a member of UCOP, which is, they both are industry associations based out of the EU. I do believe in giving back to the society, so I do kind of, I'm involved in volunteering activities where it's possible. And earlier this year, I was appointed as the member of Expert Advisory Group, or it's called EAG, within the British Pharmacopoeia Commission, or the BPC. And I also support European Medicines Agency, or the EMA, initiatives as an industry association member where possible.
Great. So you have a wealth of experience as a leader in small or startup organizations, but also have spent a number of years in big pharma too. So what would you say are the main differences that you observed?
Yeah, I mean, I've been fortunate to have worked for large and medium-sized companies, and also SMEs, or small, medium-sized enterprise, as we say in the EU and UK. And so I have seen both sides in that sense. And just to clarify, the SMEs are defined in the EU as a company with less than 250 people, or with an annual turnover of not more than 50 million euros. So that's how the SMEs are defined, and it's a similar sort of definition in the more or less in the UK. And although I have enjoyed my time at large and small companies, there are some obvious differences which I would like to share. And one thing I would like to, I mean, if I, to start, large companies will mostly have well-established system and infrastructure. So, whereas startups or SMEs may not have all the systems or infrastructure needed, at least at the start. I think there may be limited sort of infrastructure and systems present. And also resource-wise, large companies will have a greater pool of resource, whereas startups or SMEs often start with a limited staff. So I think that certainly, I would say, are some of the obvious differences. On a positive note, I would say small companies may be more open to improvising on an agreed strategy or thinking, particularly in the case of rare diseases, like, even if it means delay to the program timelines due to the complexities or uncertainties involved, like conducting clinical trial in a disease area that is rare, with limited understanding around the disease landscape within the healthcare community. So I would certainly think that's as a positive. And also for individuals, I would say, there will be plenty of learning opportunities within small companies or startups, because, you may have to step outside of your comfort zone or job description. So I know I personally feel there's a lot of learning opportunity, particularly, if you were to be part of a startup or a small company.
Yeah, definitely. In what ways do you think this could impact company culture?
Yeah, so I believe for an organization to succeed and sustain, I think communication and transparency are two key elements. As the company grows in terms of size and geographical presence, maintaining the balance between the two elements, is not going to be easy, actually. So I believe it's critical for the senior management to be transparent as much as possible and regularly communicate with the organization through, town halls or other forums. So I think this is a critical sort of element from my perspective. Great team, good leadership and cultural sensitivity makes a great organization. So when you look at startups or small companies, I mean, what you will find is that everybody knows everybody, correct? So, and I think this can sometimes be a huge benefit in terms of, from a cultural and team dynamic perspective. So I think these are some of the key elements that I believe are essential for organization to succeed.
Okay. I know that when I speak with candidates across the market of varying levels of seniority, one of the almost buzzwords that I often hear is that people are looking to join a startup. But what do you think are the benefits and then potentially the challenges to someone's career journey who may be looking to take a step in a smaller company who may not have that experience yet?
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, I see there's more appetite and willingness for, among candidates to join a startup now compared to how it was a few years ago. And I think in terms of benefits, as I mentioned, there's a huge learning opportunity, because you get to lay your hands on different things due to the limited sort of resource within the company if you were to working for a startup or small organization. I mean, as an example, in startups or smaller companies, the regulatory individual may be managing or overseeing other areas like ad promo or quality or government affairs, along with the regulatory role. So, you sometimes wear multiple hats, if you work, for a startup or small companies. On the other hand, when working for a startup, I think one obvious risk or concern that an individual may have is the job security, because the company may undergo changes or restructuring due to lack of funding or clinical trial failure. So I think there are pros and cons, obviously, but I mean, from my perspective, I've seen it's been there's always this great learning opportunity, because sometimes you go beyond your job description, you're beyond your kind of day-to-day routine activities.
Well, you've spent the last several years in smaller companies. So from a regulatory perspective, how do you feel these companies are paving the way to get more rare disease treatments to the patients who need them?
Yeah, I mean, I believe when it comes to rare diseases, more often companies have to come up with innovative ways to develop the drug or conduct the clinical trial, as sometimes there may not be guidance document available from regulators that covers all bases. So, and so the regulatory team needs to be innovative when coming up with, clinical or filing strategy, and sometimes carry out lessons learned exercise, to learn from other submissions, other similar submissions or other programs. So I think and another thing to note is that smaller companies often have limited product candidates in the R&D pipeline. So and this means that they're able to put their entire focus and resource on these product candidates. So I think this sometimes can be a huge benefit. And we are talking about usually it's like one or two two assets. So usually smaller companies start with one or two assets, so they're able to put their entire focus on resource on these sort of candidates. Now, as I mentioned earlier, small companies don't hesitate to take time and get it right, even if it means delay to the program timeline. So, and this is important when working on therapies for rare disease, because as I mentioned, there are uncertainties and complexities involved. Now, the other thing is, despite limited budget, I think small companies, in my view, don't hesitate to utilize all resources, available, like conducting advisory board or obtaining scientific advice from multiple agencies. Now, this obviously, this is done with a view to get perspective from all experts and key stakeholders in support of a regulatory or clinical strategy. So, the reason I'm highlighting this, I think these, in my view, are quite time-consuming and resource-intensive activities. So, I think hence I thought it's worth mentioning. So, I think, and these have been my experience working for small companies. I think, as I said, the huge benefit is that they're not looking at multiple assets, but their focus is usually rather one or two sort of assets. So I think that sometimes makes a difference.
Yeah, and then finally, would you like to offer any advice or guidance to individuals looking for a career within regulatory affairs?
Yeah, so I'm certainly enjoying my time, as regulatory affairs professional, and I think I would encourage individuals who are looking for a career within regulatory affairs to spend some time going through sources like TOPRA, and RAPS. They both are widely used by professionals, both experienced and somebody who is who's new to regulatory space, and there's a ton of information there. TOPRA also runs an introductory course on regulatory affairs. I believe it's a 4-day course, so very extensive. Both TOPRA and RAPS, they organize conferences and summits, and that offers valuable information to participants, and I think it provides great networking opportunity. So of course, if you're able to attend, I think it's worth sort of being part of those meetings. So, and LinkedIn can also be a useful resource in building connections. So and the other thing I wanted to mention is that you can find to candidates who are or individuals who are considering a career within regulatory affairs is to visit some of the regulatory agency websites, like the EMA or the FDA or the MHRA. I think they can find lots of useful information there. The International Council for Harmonization of Technical Requirements for Pharmaceuticals for Human Use, or the ICH website, is also valuable resource. I think you'll find a number of guidance documents on important topics. So I mean, I certainly, even still today, like I visit these, obviously use these websites or source on a pretty much on a daily basis. I think these are some useful sort of sources for candidates to look at if they are considering a career within regulatory affairs.
Yeah, that's great and very valuable advice. Thank you. So thank you, Shekhar, for taking the time to feature and providing your insights.
Thank you. Thanks for inviting me, Laura, to this chat. Thank you.